every small business, every business actually out there has a story that is unique to them in terms of what made that founder or that small business owner decide to start that business. So to anyone starting business, don't be shy about explaining kind of your origin story in some ways. Like, I think ultimately it's about knowing your why, knowing your story, and distinguishing a tone that is very unique and distinctive to you in a way that makes you stand out and makes you memorable to your customers.
If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and follow it in your favorite podcasting app or YouTube. It's the best way to avoid missing future episodes, and it helps the podcast tremendously. Welcome to the Unlock Potential Podcast, and today, boy, do we have a special episode. Let's say you're a small business owner, you really want to stand out. You want to get the word out, stand above the competition, and boy, do we have someone for you. We've got the Chief Marketing Officer of Gusto to show us how. Let's get started. All right, so today we have an amazing guest. We have Jason. Jason has such a storied career. He's currently the CMO of Gusto, but he also has experience at Amazon, AWS, Microsoft, and a bunch of others. Jason, why don't you say hi to everyone and let them know, what are you known for?
Oh, okay. Well, greetings, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm out of the Seattle area. I am the CMO at Gusto, and at work, I'm known for marketing, but away from work, I'm a proud dad of 3 young children, 12, 14, and 8, and a chocolate lab. So enjoy the outdoors, enjoy watching football, the Seahawks, and playing video games when I can find the time in between.
I didn't think about that. Normally for the Seattle guests, I do wear my Hawks jersey, but I have a special shirt for you. I think you're going to like it.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah,
I'm on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah. I know. Well, you might like this one. I look for the biggest one I have.
Oh,
this is
I have had Metroplex.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
very, very cool.
Yeah, many wars and many battles. But yeah, what's your favorite Transformer? I have to ask because as a fellow fan, I love Transformers, and so what's your favorite one?
Yeah, the obvious answer would be Optimus Prime, but my favorite Transformer growing up was Jazz. Like the Porsche, the white Porsche.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's in all the new movies, but I just thought he looked really slick, and he likes music. I like music, and he kind of plays the like the trusted advisor to the leader, Optimus Prime, and so I've always felt his role was very, he was underestimated and in some ways, an underdog in his importance to the Autobot team. So I really liked him, and I have a number of his toys, which I collect, and it's really cool. I love the look and the design of it.
Yeah, and he had such a cool voice too, right? A little bit of the robotic synthesizer.
Yeah.
Here's my favorite. It's Soundwave. I collect so many of them now. But growing up as a kid, the problem was they always sold out. So I never got one as a kid, and now I have a million of them.
Yeah, we have a similar story in that they were kind of expensive toys growing up too, and so I might get one for my birthday, but like I had a small handful, and then I think one of the first things I started buying when I got a real paying job was like, I can collect some of these. And, they did some reissues and they came out in waves, and, I would collect some along the way. Now I have too much of them. And it's funny, like, because I collect them, even though I have 2 boys out of my 3, they don't like them so much because, that's dad's thing. It's not for them. And so they like other things like Minecraft and things like that. But if only they liked Transformers, they would have a ball with all of the ones I collect here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so much fun. Well, cool. I'm going to start off with a serious question. This is the question I ask everyone. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Absolutely. Look, I grew up in Canada. It wasn't a big deal, Hawaiian pizza. And so it's like when I heard about the debate here, I didn't quite understand it. You can put if you can put anchovies on pizza, you can put anything on, anything is fair game. So I'm all for it. My kids love it and they don't think twice about it. So it's not my favorite pizza or my favorite topping, but definitely has a place.
It's funny. So for the last 5 guests in a row, up until then, it was 50-50 equal. Like, and then we had 3 in a row of hell no pineapple. And then the last one just before you was like yay pineapple, and now we had yay pineapple. So I think pineapple making a comeback. Here's a fun fact. I don't know if you know this. So coming from Toronto, there's a food tour. They make the claim that pineapple pizza, like pineapple on pizza, like Hawaiian pizza, was invented in Canada.
I've heard that. I've heard that too.
In the 60s. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's why, like, for me, for both of us going, it was never a thing. Like, it was just kind of like you go to a birthday party and you'd have it. So, like, I never questioned that until, I don't know, recently I started hearing a lot about that debate. And I was like, why is this a topic? But it is good on pizza. It's good hot. It's good grilled. If you ever grill pineapple. So it totally has its place, and it fits really well, in my opinion, on a pizza.
Yeah, it's almost as controversial as, like, come from Canada, we have fries and gravy. Here, yeah, it's like, poutine. What? Yeah, poutine. Yeah, fries, gravy, cheese gravy. But here, they're like, what? Like KFC as an example. You go to KFC, it's not standard to have gravy as an option for your fries. Here, they'd be like, why? Why would you do that? And so, yeah, so definitely some differences there.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. This is great. Jason, why don't you share a little bit of yourself, your background? So, originally from Toronto, and you have such a storied career working at P&G, Microsoft, Amazon, obviously AWS and Gusto. But we'd love to hear a little bit about your kind of journey of your origin story.
Yeah. I look back on my career and I'm like, wow, it looks kind of cool, but like it was never planned out that way. I think like many kids growing up in Canada, like you wanted to play hockey, but in my case, I wanted to play baseball because like during the time I grew up, the Blue Jays were really good and they were winning championships when none of our hockey teams seemed to be doing well, at least in Toronto. And that was kind of my dream. But then I quickly realized, okay, I wasn't going to be good enough to play at that level. And I very much followed the decisions I made were very much based on what opportunities were available to me and what could I be really good at. And I was always drawn to mathematics and sciences, never really took any business courses growing up in high school or in university, studied engineering. I went into an industrial engineering program because I'm an optimizer. I like to think about how do you make workflows or manufacturing lines and things like that very efficient. And because I was very much regimented in just how I approach things day to day. And so that made a lot of sense for me to pursue that as a major. But then when I graduated, I had a number of options available to me. I didn't even know what marketing really was outside of like ads. And I had a rare and lucky opportunity to join Procter & Gamble upon graduating in an industrial engineering program. And, what I always knew is, I've had growth mindset before that became a buzzword. And I was always looking at where can I maximize my learning and my growth. And I knew back then, and it's probably still true today, that was just a great company. You could learn just business. So it wasn't even so much about marketing, but it was more about business. And so I did that for 3 years and I realized, oh, this is really interesting. Like learning how business operates, how you understanding customer psychology, buying psychology, the importance of channel and retailers, the analysis that goes behind business decision making was something that in some ways was very much like engineering or applied mathematics. And so I really dug into that and realized that this could be a really cool career. After 3 years there, I decided, well, I wanted to further accelerate my learning. And so I went to business school And I realized, wow, like there's so much even more to learn about business. But in the course of studying all the different types of courses like finance and accounting and whatever, like communications, all that, I realized I was still very much drawn to marketing. And around that time, this was in the early 2000s, um, Microsoft was getting big into gaming. And it was not only a case study, and that was talked a lot about in business schools, like, why is this great company getting outside of its core competency of software and all that? But, it was making a big bet into that space. I had the opportunity, it was a dream job at the time to go work there in that division. And so I did an internship there. Upon graduation, I worked for almost 9 years in the Xbox division during what I would consider their peak years in gaming, around the Xbox 360, which was the first time that they had led, at least in North America, in video game console sales, because they had online gaming via Xbox Live. They were bringing over-the-top video streaming into living rooms. It was just a vibrant time of innovation for the company and for the industry as a whole. And I did that for again for 8 or 9 years, and I realized, wow, this is a really cool experience. This other company across the lake is doing some interesting things too, and I made the decision to join Amazon, where I was doing something similar, and I was focused on Prime Video, which was back then kind of a really up and coming nascent streaming provider. They'd spent years of really kind of getting to that point where it could sell and position a standalone entertainment offering. And I was one of the earlier marketing hires to help drive that next phase of growth for the company. And so I did that for 3 years. We were the first to launch original series. I spent a lot of time doing a lot of app download campaigns to drive distribution through smart TVs, game consoles, and set-top boxes like Roku and Apple TV. And so it was just a really interesting time when the category was really coming into its own back then. And just and learning about this company called Amazon and just the different ways in which they approach business was so enriching for me. I learned so much. From there, I did 6 years at AWS, where it was arguably a pretty big business by then. It was probably 5 to 7 billion in annual revenue, but they knew this business could become much bigger. And so I was part of the marketing leadership team, really focused on building out our brand, building out our sports partnerships, and our demand gen motion to drive our self-service business. Did that for 6 years. One of the most interesting experiences I could possibly ever have, because of the cloud space being such a fast-growing, transformative industry, and just enabling a lot of the companies you see today through its infrastructure, leasing out its infrastructure. So it was a phenomenal experience. But from there, I realized, wow, I'd kind of done almost 20 years into these big tech, big company roles. I was really drawn to the challenge of the startup ecosystem, because I'd been exposed to a lot of startups at AWS, that I wanted to go to one that was a little more kind of established and proven, where product market fit was strong, but I could help take it to the next level. So I joined Gusto, and over the course of the last 3 years I've been here, it's been a phenomenal experience in terms of attracting new market segments. I'd never done SMB before that. Learning to operate in a startup environment where change is constant, you're pivoting, you're making calculated bets, you're iterating and experimenting a lot, and just the chance to really have an impact and make your mark on everything you do at a company level. So it's been a phenomenal ride, and we've done really well during that time, and there's still plenty of work to do, but I've learned and grown so much from this experience alone.
That's great. And also, Gusto is one of the I can't think of a company where I've met so many owners that are so passionate about it. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like I love Gusto. Like that's almost like a given. And so it's like, but it's so rare. Like maybe like in tech, it'd be like, oh, I love Slack. Like in the early day, people, I love Slack, or I love, even Amazon. I love Amazon, right? And that, but in terms of like a SMB software provide, I've never heard of that before. Gusto is it's up there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 100%. Whenever we talk to customers, whenever I wear my Gusto jacket around town, like people who use Gusto will come up to me and say, "Yeah, I get paid by Gusto, and I love Gusto. I love the little her name is Penny, but we have this little pig, and it's an animated icon floating across the screen while you're waiting for your payroll or information." People just love these little moments of delight within the product experience. And I think what's really unique about our brand is, when you think about payroll, or you think about a lot of these tools that help, facilitate and support your HR needs, for instance, like they're utilities or they are tools. Whereas I think what Gusto did really right, to the credit of the early team and our founders and co-founders, is they understood that a small business owner is a human being. And in many ways, like unlike a lot of B2B categories, there's a lot of them, and there are people who are taking a risk or trying to achieve some sort of aspirational outcome that's higher than money in many cases. And so these people have feelings, and they want to know there's a partner there that supports them on their journey. And so from the way we show up in our communications, in our product, we don't take ourselves too serious. We were kind of one of the first to have like these animated characters on our website. It gave people a sense of like, hey, we're not like everyone else, and we're human just like you. And we want to make this experience of having to do these important things that you once thought were boring. We want to make it like enjoyable, even to some extent. And so I think that's what really drew people into Gusto, is the fact that we're different in a way that appeals to the hearts and the minds of our customers, who are the small and medium-sized business owners.
And if I was to encapsulate this, I would really wrap around this concept of a brand. Like you think about a strong brand, strong values. And so how does one create a great brand? Because there's something really unique here. You're targeting SMBs, which is typically anti-venture. Most ventures, they don't do that. They'd be like, no, don't ever go SMB. And so it's amazing that you're able to penetrate and win, but also build brand. And so, yeah, how does one create it, and what's the value of a brand?
Brand is so important, and it's something that you have to be very intentional about, but it's also something that draws from authenticity of who you are as a company. And then how does that manifest itself in how you show up across everything from the product to your marketing, to your website, to your customer service? Like, it has to be threaded throughout. And so the brand is really built in terms of what you do, more so than what you say. And what you say supports what you do, but it's all cohesive in some sense. And I think what's most important for any marquee brand out there is you trust that brand. It's very clear about who it is, who it's for, and what it stands for. And ultimately, it is about trust, and it is about standing for something. So for us, it was very much built around just our founder's vision for creating software that not only gives small and medium-sized business owners capability, but showing empathy alongside the utility that it provides, and showing up when it matters, understanding the importance and the gravity of the decisions you have to make when you're hiring someone or deciding how to pay someone. And it's also acknowledging the customer first. A lot of times, brands will be, oh, we're all about this, and we're going to show up in a way that's very self-expressive. But when you don't think about how that lands with the person you're talking to, that may hit or that may miss. And I think what a good brand does is it respects and honors the people it's trying to serve. And I think the concept of service is really important, because we're here to serve customers. And in turn, if you serve customers well, they'll reward you with their business. Whereas a lot of businesses and brands try to transact, or they're looking at, businessy terms like the TAM and all this. And in reality, it's like the way you win and the way you show up as a brand is almost like not how you want to show up on a spreadsheet or in a PowerPoint deck to investors. Like, you really want to put your customers front and center and speak to them in a way that's respectful of who they are and clear about how you communicate, not jargony, not talking down to them, but really talking at their level. And I think for me, ultimately, what has made Gusto a really strong brand, whether it was intentional or not, was just doing a lot of those things that you see really great brands do.
Amazing. And so, if I was an SMB operator, how do I'm using an example. So I'm a huge fan of coffee and spaghetti. I know they have nothing, but if I was to create like let's just say a coffee shop in this example, if I was going to create a coffee shop and I'm competing with Starbucks, how do I build a brand? How do I compete? How do I earn trust? How do I do that?
Yeah. So I think this is something I also learned in my Amazon days, where they were actually very clear that we're not trying to be Nike or Disney, where we're trying to manufacture a brand that everyone likes. Like, we're going to do the right things by our customers, which will in turn drive word of mouth. And that is really the seeds to what a strong brand looks like. And so if I'm a small business owner, and we used to describe this as the idea of like, you want to be a brand that is a lowercase b, not an uppercase B, meaning like an uppercase B brand is like, okay, well, these are all the things we stand for. So we're going to work backwards and make everything to support this idea. Whereas when you take care of your customers, you offer them great products and great services, that's the first and most foundational element. So if I'm starting a coffee shop, I'm thinking a lot about how, what's my in-store experience like? How do my baristas treat our customers? What's that environment look like that makes people want to come in? Are we sourcing the best products, offering the right products for our customers? So you start there first, and then you look at like, knowing that I have all those elements in place, how can I create a brand that is true to all of those things, right? And then the other piece I think which is especially important to small businesses, is every business actually out there has a story that is unique to them in terms of what made that founder or that small business owner decide to start that business. And I can think of a lot of small businesses that I use, where when I get a chance to talk to the founder of that business, it's like, it's really, really interesting what prompted them to start a business, because then it becomes something real. And so to anyone starting a business, like, don't shy away from, like, think about your customer experience first and foremost, but also don't be shy about explaining kind of your origin story in some ways, like to borrow from a Transformers or a comic book analogy, because that's what makes your business compelling and interesting. And then in terms of what's important about a brand is you are different in some ways. Like, you offer something great, but you stand out in what I consider the sea of sameness that you find most companies fall into. And the worst thing that I see as a marketer is when I ask you to recall a brand, or if I'm pitching a brand and you confuse it for something else, that's kind of the kiss of death. And there's a term called brand linkage, where you want people to have strong associations with your brand that really starts from occupying a unique space in someone's mind. Like, what do you stand for as a brand? How does that show up in the tone in which you show up visually, in the way you show up in words, in the way your products appear to customers? Like, those are really, really important things. And so I think ultimately it's about knowing your why, knowing your story, and distinguishing a tone that is very unique and distinctive to you, in a way that makes you stand out and makes you memorable to your customers.
I'm just going through the greatest hits of journeys, and that's beautiful. I'll give you an example. So, growing up in Toronto, I used to love Old Spaghetti Factory. You ever go there?
Yeah.
On the placemats is the story. Like they'll on the placemat, they actually have the story of how they started, why they started, and where their antiques come from. And I love that. And I think you're right, because I don't see that a lot. Not all restaurants really embrace their colors in terms of their story. And the ones that do really stand out, because now you know, like, oh man, like this place started because of this. It could be your mother's recipe or something, or you came from, I came from Italy, or I came from whatever. Like you have that origin story. And then because of that, I want to share my story with the world, and you share it through this product. And so that's a great framing.
Yeah, totally. Like everyone has a story to tell. Every business has a story to tell that makes it really interesting. And sometimes, some companies, like you think about Microsoft, well, they started in some garage, or Amazon started in some garage in Bellevue or something. Like you hear about those stories, and those stories stick. Like human beings are drawn to stories. And like kind of bringing back to the Transformers analogy, like, did you know, like, I mean, I think their toys are really cool, but their toys started out as a Japanese line called Diaclone. And these toys were, I don't know, it was just a toy. But it wasn't until like it came to the US, Hasbro bought the license for it and then named each toy and created a story arc. And then that became a cartoon. And then the rest is history. That's what allowed what was just a toy to really kind of take a life of its own and become like, a $1 billion or whatever it's worth franchise. So the importance of story in business, in branding is so important. And ultimately your brand is your story, and your story shows up in how it created from the very beginning to how it shows up every day in how a customer interacts with that company and brand.
Yep. All right. So let's step on a landmine. So you got a great brand, you're a local SMB coffee shop, you get a bad review. Bad reviews hurt, right? Because a lot of times people look at that could actually take your business. So what's a good angle of attack to fix that when you kind of have that brewing, and what do you recommend there?
Yeah, it's funny, like with reviews, and like it's really a signal of trust. Like, do I trust this business or not? Trust is something that takes a long time to build, and it's also easy thing to lose. And I think in terms of like, if you got a bad review, like ask yourself, well, was it legitimate or not? Right. And if it was, it's using like thinking, like it's not getting on the defense in the beginning and using that as signal to understand, like, is there something better I can be doing? Or like, at Amazon, not a lot of people know this, but Amazon was inspired by Toyota and the whole Six Sigma system, right? And I remember early days in my training, like Jeff Bezos, you watch these videos of Bezos talking about defects and like pulling the andon cord and things like that. And it's what's really important, and the way Amazon approached that was acknowledging if there were problems in reviews, like treat them as defects, root cause those defects, and figure out how to fix those fast, right? And so the thing that's important is, one, acknowledge it. Like, and I see, like, I shop a lot on Nike, and like, if I look at a shoe I like, if it's got a bad review, I'm always looking to see, like, does Nike respond to that or not? And I think it's always a good practice, where it's warranted, of course, to acknowledge that, like, oh, we're sorry that you experienced this thing for us. Here's how we'll make it better. I think people appreciate when you acknowledge shortcomings and you take the right steps to fix it, right? So that's like the first thing I would think about if that were to happen, right? Is nip it in the bud and use that as an opportunity to improve, and ultimately, get better over time. Now, the reverse happens too, where if you're doing great things and you are winning customers, you will organically see those reviews show up. I've also seen businesses that incentivize people to also write reviews too. And so if you have a good thing going, make it easy for people to want to write reviews. Or, if you're in a coffee shop and someone really likes coming to your coffee shop every day, like tell them, hey, we really appreciate if you write a review for us on Yelp or whatever, and I'll give you a free cup of coffee. Like little things like that kind of go a long way. And if you're even a bigger business, like, I care a lot about G2 reviews. Like we encourage our customers, good and bad, whenever they have an interaction, like write a review, let us know how we can improve, or if something's working well, we want to hear it too. And so I think if you're a strong business that offers great customer value, that review thing kind of, the bad reviews will come out in the wash as long as you're doing the right things over time.
Yeah, and in many ways, the customers will defend it too. It's like, that review is like not legit because, hey, it's not their fault that they were already fully booked for 6 months and you showed up on the last minute expecting a table. That's not their fault, right? So I think there's a lot of, great cases there. Hey, I want to play a quick game with you. And so I was scanning on Reddit and I looked at what are the top biggest issues facing like SMB and restaurant owners. So I want to take, let's take your guess. What do you think is the number one, number two issues that's trending right now? I'm going to pull it up, but
on restaurants,
yeah.
Let's see. Well, if I'm a restaurant owner, or as a restaurant patron, a food patron, I have issues with DoorDash and Uber Eats and kind of the delivery experience and how much I have to pay for it. I think tipping culture has kind of become a big issue that we're seeing on our end, just with the ease of that. I think, quality of service is always going to be an issue and top of mind. Those are three that come to mind. Did I get close to the pin on any of those?
So quality of service is definitely a big thing. And there's a root cause, right? A root cause of quality. So what are the things holding back quality of service, you think? What's the top few reasons?
People having to wait a long time to get their table, people waiting on food. Maybe restaurants are short-staffed and, they can't get a waiter in time for them to place their order. They're waiting a long time between, when they order their food and when they get it. Those are some that I've experienced personally. The cost of food is also kind of crazy. I have hungry children, and anytime we go out now, it's a special occasion more than the norm.
Yeah, so if you were to break it down, it's cost is one, and staffing issues, because a lot of the problems stem from staffing. Like if people don't show up for work, well, no one to take the order. No one to take the order, you're gonna be delayed. Or if the cook's not there to cook, well, the manager's gonna have to step in. The manager's not gonna be as good as the line cook who does it. Is the main person does it. So so those are the big buckets that we're seeing a lot. And given your experience as a great leader, would love to dive into that. So like, how does a leader build like trust with the team? And I know like you're from everything I've heard and the people I know, like you're held on high regard as a leader. And so what's your advice on how to grow leaders and how to, start building a team and culture?
Yeah. I think going back to the brand thing and borrowing from that idea, leadership first shows up in, what you do versus what you say first and foremost. So people are always looking at how you respond to situations, good and bad, especially in terms of setbacks or when, you're in a business situation and things are always challenging on different levels. It's how do you handle adversity and how do you bring people together? And ultimately, that's like people will judge you on not just how you act, but the character in which you show in those moments, right? And I remember early in my career, you'd hear a lot of leadership speak about integrity and trust and all that. But then as I've gotten further in my career, I realized those things are really important, and those things are just constant. Like they have to be ingrained in you, because over time, when people see that, then that's how you build trust and loyalty. And, I don't strive for followership or anything like that, but like people tend to gravitate towards people who are very principled in just how they do things. I think that's a very important thing. I think the second thing is like ultimately, when you're a leader, like you're assessing a situation, like there's a lot that goes through your mind. You can't let like, and I deal with uncertainty and worry and stress and disappointment and negative emotions too. But how you process that and then what comes out of your mouth, especially, is so important. And I've learned so much the importance of the difference between great communication and poor or okay communication, because people judge and respond to what they hear you say on top of what they see you do. And those things together is how you look at someone who leads effectively or not. Like if you had someone who was really good at showing, but they couldn't really talk or they couldn't communicate or articulate those things to people in a way that teaches them or that um, uh, uh, gives direction for them to take action, well, that's incomplete. Whereas even worse is if you see someone talk, but they don't follow through on the things themselves in terms of how they act, that's no good. But when you bring those two things together, I find that underpinned by character and integrity in terms of how you do things and being honest and straight with people, that's the thing that builds trust and it builds credibility, because people want to follow people who can do that. But I also think, and this may be obvious, but like it's also being competent in terms of and being having good judgment about how to handle certain things, right? Like, sometimes we put too much premium on like, oh, the smartest person in the room, but you're not always going to know everything. And one of the things I've learned in leadership is sometimes you're spread out so thin and you're covering such a wide surface area that your brain and the number of hours you have in a day doesn't allow you the opportunity to know everything at once. AI does help now in synthesizing a lot of that, but you have to know how to pick your spots and know like, oh wait, this thing could be an issue. So I need to spend a little extra time here to understand that, ask the right questions, and come up with either a fact or a hypothesis or judgment-informed way of figuring out what to do then. I think, at Amazon, we had this leadership principle called being right a lot. And like, it might sound trite, but the truth is like a good leader does have really good judgment that when they look at something, they can either determine what is a good course of action. It's not always going to be the right course of action because you don't know everything in the moment, but they know how to process things in real time because they're based a lot on principle and also to some degree, some pattern matching too, in terms of like, oh, I've seen something like this before happen, and this is a way you can deal with it. And so it's kind of bringing all that to bear, but it's not easy being a leader. You do make mistakes. You do get some things wrong, but you know how to course correct quickly when those things happen.
Well, that's so awesome. There's a lot of wisdom there. But yeah, I like what you're saying. It's basically in many ways like lead by example, but what you do matters sometimes more than what you say. Today's episode is brought to you by Tonda, the smarter way to retain and engage your skilled workforce. Here's the thing. High turnover, disengagement, and financial stress are costing businesses more than they realize. That's where Tonda comes in. Leading employers are already using Tonda's financial wellness benefits to boost retention, increase productivity, and keep their best employees longer. And here's why this matters. Tonda is already helping major companies across the US, and unlocked potential listeners have the exclusive opportunity to get in before the rush hits the open market. Be among the first to supercharge your workforce with Tonda. Learn more at tonda.io/Jesse. That's TANDA.io/Jesse. You mentioned AI a bit. So, the elephant in the room is like marketing, like in your view, is AI friend or foe? What do you think? Like, is it going to take over people's jobs, or what's your take on that?
Oh, well, I mean, like any new technology, like you go back to the Industrial Revolution, like machines replaced people for certain tasks and software replaced a more manual pen and paper way of doing things more recently. And now AI is going to change the way we work. And will it replace jobs? Probably. Will it create new jobs? It probably will as well. Will it make people in existing jobs more effective? Absolutely. And I see more of things happening in that camp. Like, they use that term human in the loop, and that is really important as far as making sure you're not trusting everything to AI. What I like to tell people is like, AI won't just kill marketing or won't like replace people's jobs fully, but it will start to standardize things. It will raise the floor in terms of like getting rid of bad marketing. Like the one thing about marketing, and even it's true to my experience, I don't have a degree in marketing, or I never studied it in my undergrad. When I took my very first job at a world-class marketing company, and one of the challenges you face if you're not in a profession like maybe software development or engineering or being a doctor where you have to have very certain skills is it kind of starts to create more uniformity and standardization. Like I see a range of like talent in marketing because it's not something that's taught, or it's something that has to be kind of self-taught or learned on the job. And I think it normalizes a lot of that because now everyone has access to the tool, and you don't have information asymmetry. You don't have someone who knows a mentor they can tap into because now everyone has that same information. And I think that can help make everyone better. And it certainly will make things faster and more automated on things that take a lot of time. Like my strength and my superpower, if you will, in marketing is like, I like to think I know how to write and I know what good copy looks like because ultimately, like as a marketer, I'm trying to establish a clear position of my brand in your mind, as I was mentioning before. And like that happens a lot through imagery. It happens a lot through wording and copy. But I've spent hours on headlines and taglines and looking at marketing copy in the past. And now what would take me hours takes me seconds or minutes even, right? And I think on things like that, when you can accelerate what used to require a lot of deep thinking, that kind of frees you up into thinking, well, what is it am I trying to communicate here? And then I can start to look at different versions that get me there versus like anyone who's written something or written a book, like you can have writer's block, and it can take a long time to get your thoughts on paper and then to iterate. So that's one obvious example of where like it has a very clear use case that can make any marketer better. And there's probably a plethora of other use cases that I use to just speed things up and help me sharpen my thinking so that I can do more in less time.
That's great. I want to ask you a question. This is a question I'm actually really, really excited to ask. I even wrote it down. So, when you got your job at Gusto, how does that work? Does the founder call you and go, hey, Jason, come be my CMO? Like, okay, so that's one. How does that conversation start? And two, what's the interview process like? Like I've interviewed probably thousands of people over my career, so I love recruiting. But I'm really curious for like a top dog position in marketing. Like, hey man, sell this pencil. Walk me through it. Like, how does that? What is that journey like?
I'll kind of reveal like sort of the there's different ways it happens. You can either go through a networked route or come in cold. And I will say it always helps to come in with a network, with someone who can introduce you to the right folks and to build community and to be someone who is somewhat well known by reputation because of who you worked with and what you've done in the past. Like that generally, like when I've made important hires, generally that's been the best approach is to find someone, it's to ask around. And like, I'd ask you, do you know someone who is excellent in demand gen or product marketing or whatever? And then kind of go from there and that's more of a bottoms up approach. But at a leadership level, a lot of recruiting happens through executive search firms. And maybe that's a little bit of it may or may not be a known thing for your audience, but generally, there's in the tech world in particular, there's a small handful of agencies that we use when we're searching for very senior leaders, or that will reach out to you with opportunities around, at different companies and different profiles, looking at different profiles. And oftentimes, let's say like you are an AI company and you want a job there, like you want to go through some of the recruiters who specialize in those areas. And that is something that like I didn't read a book on how this all works. It just kind of happened organically. But I think knowing how the system works and knowing how to get in front of the right people is really important. And you can't really expect people to just find you. Like that is not how it works today. And in this age of LinkedIn where and ZipRecruiter, like people just have to click a button to to apply for a job, which means when you're on the other end of it, you're seeing thousands of resumes and you can't sort through 1,000 resumes, or maybe AI can help you do some of it, but you're always worried, am I going to miss out on someone who's good because they didn't know how to game the AI algorithm? And I think it's still one of those things that's still very much like, if it can be referral based, that's the best way to go. But generally, if you're looking at leadership opportunities, whether you're in marketing or sales or engineering, it's like, you have to get to be familiar with who the top firms are and, be willing to take calls with some of these people, even if you're not looking, just to have the introduction, because these folks make money when they place people. And if it's not you, they want to know who you know in order to figure out who to place. And so that's not a bad strategy in terms of just overall career management. But as far as our interview process goes, I think, it borrows from some elements of Google and some elements of Meta, but like we generally do, 6 to 7 interviews. Some folks like, I prefer behavioral interviews because I want to know about something you've done in the past to give me confidence, whether you can do it in the future, do the same thing in the future, or adapt to a future situation. But, interviewing is an imperfect science, and, you can still make bad hiring decisions based on that. But having checks and balances, like we use a hiring committee structure where when we pull together people's feedback and the hiring manager makes a recommendation, it still has to go through a independent group who then looks at the feedback and determines, hang on, did we miss something here? Does this person look like they'll be a good hire or not? And companies like Amazon will use what's called a bar raiser, and Microsoft uses, I think it was back then it was called an as app or as appropriate person to just gut check that you're not overly biased because you need that role or you like that person. You want an objective person in the loop. But, I've seen different flavors of how that works at Gusto. And a lot of times, I think ultimately a good interviewer and having a good process is not just, asking the surface level questions, but going deep in their experience and understanding like, well, why did you make that decision? What trade-offs did you assess when you were making that decision? What informed that decision? And people can give you really good surface level answers, but people who really know can go like 5 levels deep. And those who do that, then like, okay, that person is speaking from a place of like, they really experienced this. They can bring you into that world. And in most cases, they would be a good hire, in my opinion.
Again, they go to the atomic level. And then, so what's the hardest interview question that they would ask you then? Like, is there a question you fear, or did you conquer them all? Or is there like, what's tough as you prepare and think about job interviews?
I've done thousands of interviews myself, and I've been interviewed a bunch as well. And I would say and I'll speak more in generalizations as opposed to a specific question. But anytime there's a vague, open-ended gotcha question is the ones where I don't love those questions, and I find it hard to answer on the spot under the spotlight of what it's like being an interview situation. So like I once had someone ask me, okay, here's $1 million. What would you do with it? And it's like, okay, well, where do you like, give me some more content? And I think what they're really trying to do is to kind of make you a little bit uncomfortable to see how you respond to stress, but also to see how you might frame something like that. I think Google does, I've heard Google sometimes does this as well. Although I don't have experience with Google. But it's more of like a situation that's designed, a question that's designed to kind of catch you off guard. And I think some people can really show up well depending on how they go into an interview, whereas sometimes you can get flustered. And what I've learned whenever I've encountered that is you realize quickly that you're not, and this is advice I give to anyone who's interviewing is like, don't think of the right answer. Think about the answer that's true to you or your experience, because you can't be wrong if you're speaking from something that is your truth, right? And so I think when you flub answers or difficult interview questions, it's because you're looking for the right answer or you're looking for what you think that person wants to hear. And I've kind of gone away from that strategy of I want to tell you the right answer. Because like, let's say I do tell you the right answer and I get the job or I've succeeded in acing the interview process. All I've done is I've kind of figured out how to hack my way or manipulate my way into getting a job. And I could learn very quickly if I got the job on the basis of how quickly I was able to think on my feet and give the right answer, that I might be a very bad fit for this job and fail at this job. And so I think I always tell people whenever you're interviewing, just remember it's as much about you interviewing them as vice versa. And your job is to give them as much information in why you are or are not the right candidate and let them decide. But it's recognizing that you're not there to win an interview. You're there to help inform whether they're a good, you're a good hire for them, and for you to determine if they're a good company for you.
Amazing. All right. I've only got two more final questions, and so this has been really good. So first is, if you had one piece of advice to give to an SMB owner operator, what would that be?
I think it's know your customer. Like, and this is true in any business, but be very clear about who is the ideal person who would use your services, right? And be very specific about who that person is in the beginning, because ultimately, like when you're starting out as a small business owner, like you want to get from zero to like your first 10 customers or your first 100 customers. And you want those people to be as loyal as possible, because those people are going to tell their friends about your services. And so it's almost like going the extra mile once you know who they are and figuring out what's important to them, winning them over. Like my wife will come to me and say like, oh, I went to the most amazing cupcake shop and like they know my name and they know what I like. And like she feels like it's a very intimate experience, because that's something that a small business can do that a big monolithic company like doesn't have the ability to do. And so it's kind of know your customers and go over and above to make them into not just customers, but fans of yours.
Great. And last question, what should I ask you that I didn't ask you?
What? Oh, geez. You asked a lot of good questions. I think one of the questions that I don't get asked a lot, but I always like to give an answer is like, well, how do I plan my career so that I can achieve what you achieved or more? Or like, how do I shortcut my way into a CMO, and how do I plan for that? And one of the things that I like to tell people is you got to just put one foot in front of the other. Like have a goal, have a North Star in mind, like know what direction you're heading, but you cannot prescribe a path, because there's so much of that happens outside of your control that you can't account for. And you have to be willing to look maybe 3 steps ahead, or maybe 2 to 3 steps ahead to think where this could go. But it's very hard to plan 10 steps ahead or 100 steps ahead. So when people ask the question, what's your 5-year plan or your 10-year plan? I have none, and I still don't have. I hope I'm alive in 10 years or 5 years, or I'm healthy in 5 or 10 years. Yeah. That's about it. But it's kind of like I didn't know, like when you and I talked a month ago, there was no one was talking about tariffs or like what would happen in the economy. And here we are today living in a very different world where things could have changed and may change even more. And you can account for that. And any kind of prescriptive plan you had when things like that happen is out the door. And there's a famous Mike Tyson saying where I forgot, I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, but like there is no plan once you get punched in the mouth or something like that. And it's like it's so true. And life will punch you in the mouth.
And everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Punch in the face, exactly, exactly. And so don't like the question is like that I wish people asked me more is like, how do I plan for this? It's like sometimes you can't, or your plan has to be flexible enough to account for many different options. You should know approximately where you want to go, but don't hold on to a plan too tightly because you will get frustrated when something outside of your control happens. And like, I hate to say this, but luck does have a factor in a lot of things. But if the way you manage and account for luck is give yourself enough at bats, as they say, or give yourself enough chances to try. And eventually, like, you will have some bad luck. You also have some good luck. And hopefully the good luck overcomes the bad luck in some sense. But know that as smart as you are, as prepared as you can be, and you should be because you can control for that, know that when you're out in the real world, things do happen outside your control, and how you respond to those things and adapt to it, I think that ultimately determines how successful you can become.
Jason, thank you so much. It's been an amazing time. I personally learned a lot, and I could talk to you all day, and I'm sure everyone else agrees too. So to close out, if someone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way, and any closing comments from you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Jason Ng is probably the easiest way to reach out to me. If my parting advice is, be balanced in your life, look after your health. I think one good saying I read on an influencer I follow is like, you could have 100 problems in life, but when you have a health problem, that's the only problem you have in life. And I thought that was so profound because as I deal with middle age and I see other people around me, I realize, wow, like things can happen to your health. And when we're a driven person, you don't think about that because you're too busy trying to achieve your goals. But like, step back, manage your stress, take care of your body, eat well, exercise, be out in nature. Those are pieces of advice that I realize now in my middle age are so important to just longevity and peace of mind. And so I think that's one piece of advice that if you forget all the businessy talk I mentioned up front, like in life, like take care of yourself and know that, you will always have the ability to make more money, but you can't get time back.
So true. So true. Everyone, I just want to say thank you again, Jason. It's been amazing. And thanks for the time. I appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks, Jesse. Thanks for having me.